Welcome everybody to Cosmic Divide, episode 6, for real this time. And I'm joined by my wonderful co-host TMV as usual. TMV, before we get into today's topics, I wanted to know what your experience was like going to Berlin, because you got invited to go stream from the Coliseum, and I'm curious what that was like. I've been to the LA studio, you've been to the Coliseum, and I want to kind of compare our experiences.
Okay, so let's do you want me to just focus on the actual VCT event, not the stuff surrounding it? 'Cause it was a mixed experience, I think, overall.
Okay,
There's
well,
some things that went,
travel is always kind of
yeah,
like that, right?
travel's travel. Once I got into the arena, it was kind of it was cool. I mean, I know when you look at the EMEA arena, it looks cool.
Hmm.
And yeah, it looks cool. Like when you're in there, like it's a cool setup. It's a cool setup where like the fans are and where I was in the little streamer booth and whatever, like kind of overlooking the players. Like you can very much see the players, you can see their reactions. I'll tell you something for definite. It is a lot louder in the
Hmm.
arena than it comes up on the broadcast. I don't know if this is just like in Americas, I feel like you do pick up quite a bit of the arena
Hmm.
when things happen. Famously, 100 Thieves fans telling 100 Thieves where to go. But yeah, in EMEA, I feel like you don't quite like unless you hear like a little cheer, like when there's a crazy moment or whatever. But it's like loud, like really loud. Like I couldn't like I had obviously headphones on and I was streaming it and whatnot. But if something was going like crazy or if the fans were cheering, like you can't hear anything other than that cheering. Particularly with the sticks when people are going those like inflatable
Okay.
sticks when they're going like boom 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 boom. Like it's really loud. Which was cool as well because I didn't expect it to be that loud. But that was like genuinely pretty cool. On the whole, though, yeah, I think it was a fun experience. I didn't quite get the I guess full time to spend with the players. It does end pretty late,
Hmm.
um, and there was a classic EMEA tech pause. It seems like there's tech pauses in EMEA every time these
Right.
days. So yeah, it did end pretty late. Um, but other than that, yeah, I think it was really, I think it's a really good setup. To be honest, and I think if you do want to go, yeah, you're right by the players. The winning teams do autograph stuff and whatnot. And if you don't mind it ending a bit late, then yeah, it's definitely a fun experience for sure. I think it's definitely worth checking out once because the atmosphere is, as I said, a lot more vibrant than you might think watching the broadcast.
Hmm. Was that your first time going to like an esports event, or have you been to
Yeah,
others?
yeah. I've never been to an esports event before. Yeah.
Okay, cool. How did it compare to like a sporting event? Did it feel like pretty similar in your opinion? Because
Uh,
that was my experiences when I first went to like a big esports event.
mm.
I was like, oh, I understand why this is going to be like a popular thing in the future because it really feels like going to like a big Coliseum event.
I mean, I guess it's not like a massive audience size, and I was
Right.
working as well, so it's kind of like maybe I didn't get that full like viewer experience, I guess, because it
That's
was a
fair.
bit different for me. Um, but yeah, in terms of like what the atmosphere of the crowd and stuff, then yeah, like I can imagine like particularly if you were going to like a Masters event or something like that, right? And it was this massive game, really tense situation or whatever. Yeah, I could imagine that, like, loud fanatic lock-in finals. Yeah, I can imagine that would have been like really cool to be at live and whatever. Which is why it annoys me when people are so against like home fans cheering for their home teams.
Right.
Because what? That's the whole point. Like, that's the best part of all of. That's the point of going live. Like, I don't know. That just annoys me when people in esports seem to. I honestly don't know why. Like thinking that. I mean, there should be good guys and villains. I think that makes it more fun. To be honest, I'd love being a villain. There's nothing better than being a villain. Like, there's nothing
Right.
better. The most satisfying feeling in the world, I would think, is if you were a football or soccer for you, player, and you're getting like jeered by the you're playing an away game and you're getting jeered by the fans all day. Then you score a goal and then you just shush the crowd. Like it's just
Yeah.
the
You hold up
sense of
your hand. You're like, yeah, let me
yeah
hear you
yeah
now.
yeah the sense of satisfaction it must just be through the roof. Like it just must be such a great moment. Um, and yeah, that would be the case I think for esports as well. If you were getting like jeered and booed as you were coming out, like oh, I'd be playing it up big time. I'd want
Oh
them to
yeah.
boo as much as I can. Then when I win, I'm standing up and I'm saying I'm giving them the yeah all the signs of like oh can't hear you now. Like yeah, um,
Nice.
but yeah, it was a great experience.
Cool. Yeah, I was. Were you there for the full like three set of games for the week, or did you just go for
Oh,
one?
I just went for one day. Yeah, I was just there for the day.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So when I went to LA for week 2 of Americas, and
Hmm.
I was there for all three like days of the play, and it was awesome. I mean, I thought the arena was like not quite as cool as I thought it was gonna be,
Hmm.
but I think it just kind of felt like a big like theater. But
Yeah,
the what I
that's what it
really
looks like on the
noticed,
broadcast. Yeah.
yeah, what I really noticed was that the game looks insane on
Mm,
with like max settings because like
yeah,
and you just never see the pro game in its full glory because it's like coming through compressed like Twitch or YouTube
yeah.
streaming. But if you're there watching it like straight from the PCs, it looks insanely crisp, and the sound is
The
unbelievable. Like
sound, yeah,
the
yeah,
sound design of the game is crazy good on like really good surround sound speakers. Like every footstep, every little like Omen bringing out his paranoia. There's like this cool like whoosh, as it like brings it out that you just don't hear normally, you know?
yeah,
Yeah, but I liked it a lot. I'm very excited to see what it's like at a bigger arena because I'm gonna try and
yeah.
go to Champs this year because it's in LA
Oh,
also.
that's gonna be sick. That would be sick.
Is the VCT season a little too long, or do you think that viewer fatigue is fine? What's been your experience as somebody who watches like every single game? Do you think that the cadence should be sped up a little bit? Like instead of doing, one game a week, everybody to prep for an entire week, play another
Mm.
game, or should we do, maybe like 2 games a week, just kind of like cut the season in half as far as like the length of it, same amount of games, but the length that's spread out along.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be an interesting problem as we go forward, of course, because
Yeah, more
more teams are
teams.
only going to get added, right?
Yep.
Each league's going to have more and more teams each year. And so I assume that once we start, what did they say? It would get to 14 teams at one point. I think that's what they said the max, like, and
Oh,
then they'll
did they
revisit
actually
it.
say there's a cap?
Not that they said there was a cap, but like they gave their like long term view, and I think it got up to 14. And then when they get to 14, it's kind of like we're like 4 or 5 years in the future, so we'll talk about
Right.
it then.
Hmm.
But I'm pretty sure they said that it get to at least 14. Once you're at 14 teams, and remember, this year we had lock in. Next year, there's going to be two of these.
Right.
There's going to be a whole league season into a Masters, into another league season, into a Masters before like LCQ and Champs. So it's gonna feel even longer. Like this year we got lock in, which was, just a month straight of just, just play every day. There's games pretty much. But next next year it's gonna be even longer essentially. So yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they did start to truncate it a bit. I think for most people though, I don't think it's too big of a problem because you can just most people are probably going to watch maybe their region, maybe if they're interested in a team or two from the other regions. Um, Obviously, for someone like me, or for someone like you, or anyone who's like really, really into the scene that wants to watch, as many games as they possibly can. Yeah, that's a tough ask, and I don't know if you watched the most recent plat chat, but Leo, what's he called? Leo
Faria.
Faria, yeah,
Yeah.
was on there basically talking about this. The
Mm.
combined with this, and then you've got some of the tier 2 stuff as well going on. Like it's a lot of Valorant to watch. Like it's a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. And I think they talked about some interesting little things like having the off season, like challenger leagues starting, sort of midway through the off season and whatnot to kind of,
Right.
give that its own space. And then, then it's just like, oh, you just watch a bit and then, it's like, fine, whatever. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that would be a good thing overall, right? And then basically, like, you do it on the timetable where Ascension is obviously like their champs. And so
Right.
you can start it earlier on, and then the time window is kind of the same thing um, for all those tier 2 teams. So, yeah, I think that stuff like that makes sense, and I think there are ways that they could go about it. And when there's 11 teams in a league like there will be next year, you have two ways of doing it essentially, right? If you're going to play like it is kind of now, either one team plays 2 games that week,
Hmm.
or one team has a bye. So
Right.
probably the easiest way of doing that is, instead of a team having a bye and making it an extra week longer, even so, like, in each week a team has a bye, probably what they'll do is just say, well, one week you're just going to have to play 2 games. And that's just the
Yeah.
way it's going to be. And unlucky, everyone's got to do it once. And that's the way it's going to be, I guess, uh, to stop. Because otherwise, if they do keep pushing it out and pushing it out, then that is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like sort of two sides to the argument, and in one camp you have obviously like the coaches and players are going to want to play, probably just going to want to play one game a week just because it gives them so much
Yeah.
time to prep for one opponent. But I also feel like most sports don't do that because except for like football, like American football, because you kind of need like the recovery time because you're just like
Yeah.
beating each other up. But like
Yeah.
basketball, you play multiple games in a row. Baseball, you play like they play like 3 or 4 game series like against a team like day after day after day, and then they go play a different team. And in esports, obviously, there's no like danger to your body, so you could technically play a bunch. And I feel like most players, they play like 15 games of ranked in a row. Like they're
Yeah.
not they're not like opposed to playing multiple games. It's just the quality of Valorant is going to be a little bit different if you don't have a full week to prep
Yeah.
for a team and anti-strat them and stuff like that. So in some sense, like maybe the quality of the games goes down a little bit, but maybe that makes it more exciting potentially.
Hmm.
And I don't know. For me personally, in these last like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I've really started to like pick and choose which games I'm watching because I started out, I would watch all of Americas, all of EMEA, all of Pacific, some of the Challengers leagues,
Yeah.
and
Same.
now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch like this game. All right,
Yeah.
Fnatic's playing whoever. I'm not gonna watch that. It's obviously a win for Fnatic. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
One of
have gotten
those where if Fnatic
so
ever got upset, I'll go back and watch it. But
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, as long as I can skip through all the tech pauses on YouTube and like
Yeah.
but it's been so much to watch, even for me who's like doing this as a job.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Anyway,
agree.
interesting discussion to be had, especially as stuff gets bigger and more teams are added to the league.
Mhm.
The main core of today's show is going to be an award show, and yes, there's still a couple leagues going on. And yes, when this show comes out, some of these might be a little bit outdated. So, in the comments, just relax. Sometimes it takes like a day or two from the podcast being recorded for it being released. But we're going to be giving our sort of like Split 1, Season 1 awards out for categories like MVP and coach of the split and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and just start it off with the MVP. We're going to give an MVP for each regional league. So, TMV, do you have an MVP in mind for the Americas League?
My America's League MVP, to me, it came down to 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is pretty obvious, to be honest. I'd be surprised if you had anything different, but I'm willing to hear you out. And that is Leaf and Aspas. Um, I feel like obviously they've been the star players of the 2 best teams, so it kind of makes sense that they would be the MVP. And I think it's an interesting debate as to who you go for, because I feel like Aspas has maybe been a little up and down. Like he hasn't, and maybe coming off his most recent game against NRG, where he was kind of neutralized a lot. Maybe that's sticking in my mind as a kind of ding against Aspas. But then also Aspas has just literally completely taken over games.
Mm-hmm.
And Leaf has had game maps like that as well. But I mean, Aspas, it felt like in a lot of games, completely dominated the game. And Aspas, I don't know if it's Aspas's style. He just does stuff that no one else does, right?
Mm-hmm.
His ability to survive a situation where he has no right to survive. There's
Yeah.
no way he should ever get out of a situation, and he does it so consistently that it just doesn't make any sense. And I see people saying, "Oh yeah, but Loud's utility to set him up and allow him to escape is good," and that's true. But a lot of the time, he'll just be on like, particularly on their defense sides, they will just leave a side of the map to Aspas. They will just
Yeah.
say, you stick on that side, we'll deal with the other side." And he still manages to escape on his own, just with the jet smokes and the updrafts and whatnot. Like he still manages to get away. It's insane. So it's between Aspas and Leaf, and I think overall C9's team play has been better. So I'm gonna give it to Aspas, even though right now, considering like Loud seem to be maybe on, not as a high as C9, that might not, seem like the right choice. But I think in terms of like what he's done for Loud, not that C9, would be good with like Leaf is amazing, obviously, but I think that he's solo carried maps more often.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess I kind of agree with that. The thing that really sets Cloud9 apart is their ability to play off each other. That's 100%
Yeah.
true. And I almost feel bad like soloing out Leaf from that, because
Yeah.
in some sense I would almost say, like Zepp has been super impactful, and Zelsis is kind of like mid-rounding, and his kind of like glue guy thing has been kind of like the most important part of that team.
Yeah.
Obviously Leaf has kind of gone above and beyond what we expected out of him. I mean, we've always known that he's like really good.
Yeah.
But just because of how Cloud9 performed last year, I think we kind of forgot how good he is, and this year he's really showing it. It's like, doesn't matter what agent he's on, he's probably the best player in the server, unless maybe he's playing against Auspus, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I want to debate you. I want to give sort of a dissenting opinion, but I don't really know if I can, to be honest. I think it probably is Aspas, just because he's been far and away the best player, just overall. The only thing that I would say against him potentially is that he's only played one agent.
Yeah.
He's only played Jet. I know that he can play Raze. Like his Raze is decent. It's not world class, but it's definitely pretty good. But he's only played Jet, and in the system that they have, he's been functioning as the best duelist in North America, probably in the world, to be honest. Outside of, I guess it's either him or Durka. Honestly, I think I just have to agree with you. As much as I want to debate that, I think it's just Auspus. I don't really know if there is anybody else that we can give this to.
Okay.
That's kind of a boring way to start it off, but
okay. Let's go to EMEA then. And why don't you start with EMEA?
Okay, EMEA is a little bit, I mean, which Fnatic player are we picking, right? Is it Durka? Is it Alphayear? Is it Chronicle? Is it Leo? I am going to go a different route, I think.
Oh.
And I'm going to pick Boaster, my MVP.
Wow.
And the reason that I'm going to pick Boaster as my MVP is because coming into the season, I think we actually talked about this maybe in our first podcast that we did, which is that if Boaster doesn't win with this team, like he's kind of done, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the fact that he comes in with all this pressure, the expectations of, we've finally built you literally the best team possible that we can build right now, and you got to show up. You got to, use these pieces that we've given you correctly, and he's done it. I mean, obviously, credit to Mini, credit to everything else, but the fact that he came in with this pressure, with all these, expectations, and obviously as an IGL, if you can just be like, hey, Durka, I need this space, and then he just goes and takes it from the other team by brute force. Hey, Leo, we need, do you have a lineup for this? Oh, obviously you do. Okay, that's great. Hey, Chronicle, can you come up with some crazy play by yourself that wins us this map? Obviously you can. That's really nice as an IGL. But being able to utilize the pieces correctly is a huge skill, and something that I respect a ton. And so I think just because he's been able to kind of live up to expectations consistently and deal with yet another instance of having to use a sub and kind of like navigate that pretty smoothly. All right, we're integrating another player in, no big deal. We're still winning, we're still dominating. I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it to Boaster. I mean, they're the only undefeated team in VCT in this first season, and I think deservedly so. And a lot of that comes down to the leadership. So,
Okay. I would like to shout out Safe as well.
mhm.
He's actually a top rating, I think, in the world. He's actually joint with Alfia now that I look at it. Here in EMEA. But 1.35 VLR rating. Yeah, I mean, he's just been crazy for Team Liquid. But I think, yeah, I mean, if you have to give it to someone from Fnatic, I think. And my pick would be Chronicle, I think.
Okay.
Just because I mean, again, when you're picking between these Fnatic players, you are splitting hairs. Like, I mean, you could easily make a case for pretty much anyone on the team. Uh, but I think Chronicle. I mean, every time I just watch them play, he just always seems to just do the correct thing.
He's
I don't know.
so
It's just like
good.
it's a boring answer, but it's like he's just if you need a trade, Chronicles there. Don't worry about it. You need like a piece of util to you need a flash to land at a good point or a whatever like bit of utility to be at the right point at the right time. Like Chronicle will do it. Like you need like
You
a
need a
multi
hero
kill or
play?
something.
He'll give
Yeah,
it to you. Yeah.
yeah, he'll give it. Yeah, it just feels like he's just doing everything right. Like he just has so many moments in games where it's like, oh yeah, that's another great moment by Chronicle. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it to him, but I do also think Safe particularly early on for Liquid, maybe not so much more recently, and obviously he hasn't played in one of the games or whatever recently. But early on, Safe was carrying Liquid. Like
Yeah.
Safe was solo carrying Liquid on his own.
Yep.
So I think for those early games, he deserves a mention. But yeah, I'll go Chronicle across the whole thing. And then finally we got Pacific, and my pick for Pacific is the same as my pick as always for Pacific, and that is Mako because Mako's the best player in Pacific, and it took a while. I remember I was on the Mako train
Hmm.
quite early on. I remember probably last Reykjavik, last Copenhagen, on my stream talking about Mako and like people didn't realize that like last year, if you look at like just stats last year, Ye
Hmm.
was the best player last year, like just
Right.
statistically, right? Mako was clearly the second best player. It was like Ye and Mako were a top two, and then there was a massive gap. You might think it's Ye and a massive gap. No, it was actually Ye, then Mako, then a massive gap. And that's not including like Mako farming in Korea or whatever. This is just like if you just look at the international tournaments, like it was Ye, and then it was Mako, and then there was a sizable gap.
Hmm.
And Mako, everything like again, if you want to talk about players who just seems like they just don't make mistakes, then Mako is perhaps your greatest example of a player for, we've seen like, the other Smokes players who were, kind of up there with Mako last year, the Pancadas, the Marvs, whatever. You know, I mean, they're playing for Sentinels, so that, brings it down a bit because, good luck with that. But, they haven't, I mean, even Ye, take Ye. There's
Yeah.
very few players that have consistently just stayed at the top of the game.
Yep.
If we look at someone like Chronicle as well, it's like another good example where 2021 Chronicle like absolutely farming. He had a fairly quiet 2022 on Mech, right? Like it wasn't amazing. They couldn't make it to an international tournament, and it's not that he was a bad player, but he just maybe wasn't playing quite as well. Whereas Mako is just always amazing.
Hmm. Yeah.
There
I
you go.
mean, I think that's pretty fair. I am just going to go ahead and agree with you on Mako, but I will also give a secondary option just to be a little bit
Yeah.
more interesting. And that is Dep from Zeta Division. Because I think without Dep, this
Mm.
team is quite literally like an 0-9 team. Or maybe maybe
Really?
maybe not quite that
That's
bad.
that's harsh.
But I think that without Dep, this team is nowhere near the playoff picture. I think that he
Mm,
is so important. And his stats are not necessarily like incredible, but
got some
he
big
is
bones.
consistently so like he's almost like the only reason that this team ever gets to a bomb site. Like he's like so important in breaking open the map because he's like really aggressive, and the rest of the team is very slow and kind of methodical in how they do things.
Mm,
But Depp is like always so far in front of everybody, like he has to be. They send him in by himself. If he doesn't get like 3 kills, there's no way they take the site. But he gets 3 kills like 60% of the time. The other 40% of the time he goes in and feeds. But that 60% is like so important to them actually winning maps that it's just interesting because like Zeta's their structure is good and like their calling is pretty good, but they feel like almost kind of like they're plodding along sometimes and how they're like going through the game. But then you have these moments of like explosive just playmaking, and it's almost
Mm,
always coming from Depp. And so I think with he's like the spark that has allowed this team to kind of like still compete against some of the best in
yeah.
Pacific. And if they don't have him, there's no way, in my opinion.
Okay. So our next thing is rookies in the leagues. Now, I think we defined rookies as someone who hadn't played at an international tournament before, other than lock-in, I guess.
Yeah, this would be before this year has not played in an international
Yeah.
tournament. So if they played at lock in, that's like their first international tournament,
Yeah.
basically.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Shall we go through America's first then? So
Yep.
America's, I mean, there's some obvious ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some obvious like Cloud9 players, both
Mm-hmm.
Jake and Rooney, who seem like an obvious choice for this, and that would be a good choice. And I'm kind of struggling with this one, to be honest, because I do think that there are others as well. I think Demon One
Mm-hmm.
on EG
Good
has
shout.
been very good and deserves a shout. Som, I guess, would count for this as well from
Mm-hmm.
NRG. And I guess if you include lock, I guess if we don't include lock in, then maybe some maybe hasn't been as big a surprise. But from when I saw Som at lock in, I wasn't expecting him to be as good as he was. Maybe the expectation has just become, yeah, Som's pretty good, so it's not so surprising when he goes crazy and whatnot. But I think you've got to give it to one of the C9 guys. I mean, they were thrown into an impossible situation.
Yeah.
Which one do you choose, though? I mean, it's so tough. Um, I'm just gonna give it. I'm gonna give it to Rooney.
I was gonna say it's got to be Rooney. As great as Jakey has been, and like he's kind of like the maybe more flashy of the two because he's
Mm,
he's Big Bean. He's running through smokes. He's headshotting people
yeah,
with the sheriff. But Rooney stepping into IGL for a team, I
yeah,
mean, as your very first one, that's crazy. That's crazy.
yeah. That is
And
honestly.
also he has better stats technically than Jakey as well. So if you want to be a
Mm.
nerd, you can go off of that as well.
Okay, shall we
Um,
move on to? Oh,
for me,
oh yeah.
I'm
Oh,
gonna
I thought
I'm
you were just agreeing.
no, I agree with your pick, but for me it's Som because
Oh, okay.
I was a big Som doubter coming into this year. I was like,
Mm.
really, they're bringing in they're keeping the streamer on their team. Clearly they're doing like the tens thing where it's like we just keep our most popular streamer on the
Mm.
team for branding. But Som has been really good. He's been an international level talent, and
Mm.
that has been super awesome to watch because I like it when people prove me wrong because it's like okay,
Okay.
skills. Yeah, I gotta respect that. But yeah,
Okay.
let's
Makes
move on
sense.
to EMEA.
Okay, EMEA I think is easy. I think there's only two options, uh, and that is Kiwi and Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Kiwi, sometimes when Kiwi plays, you watch him play and you think this guy belongs on like a top team.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes you watch him play and you're like, yeah, this guy's just nuts. This
What is
guy
this foot
is
slander? They are a top team.
no, but like he sometimes he looks like, oh yeah, you could replace Durka for Kiwi and they wouldn't
Hmm.
look any different. Consistency maybe isn't always there. Like he's not nearly as consistent as like the top players, but he has it in him. And I think maybe maybe next year or whatever, like we might look at Kiwi and be like, okay, yeah, he's ready now to just like go crazy and be on like a top team, or maybe take Foot to be a top team as well. And the other one is Cloud, who I will give it to because Cloud consistently has been amazing. I mean, he's just been amazing. And I think he's a large part of Giants' success. I think if they just replaced Cloud with like an average level EMEA player, then Giants would be not nearly as kind of solidified as they are. And so yeah, my pick is Cloud.
I'm going to be boring and I'm going to agree with you because
Mm.
I really don't think there is anybody else other than Cloud. And I will say that Kiwi is a good shot as well, but it's Cloud, and I think
Yeah.
it's not even really close.
Yeah. And then our Pacific picks. This one's
Ooh.
kind of interesting. I wanted to shout out my boy Tebatol, but then I realized Tebatol actually went to champs.
Hmm.
Uh, so he doesn't count. So I mean, something has to be a consideration.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
he's just crazy. And then I think Moniette as well for GE also has been kind of I mean, just very, very strong. Also, Envy from Team Secret is one where, I had never heard of Envy before. I was like,
Hmm.
who the hell is that? Don't know. And then he turns up and it's like, oh, this guy is really, really good. So those would be my three, but I think I am just gonna go give it to something because I mean, I know he was absolutely frying in like Japanese tier two, but a lot of people be like, "Oh, Japanese tier two, really? I think I could fry in Japanese tier two." Like,
That was me.
but no, this guy is just genuinely like better than like. If anything, it makes me think, oh, Japanese tier two might not be too bad
Right.
because he's come to tier one. He's doing the exact same thing. He's just
Yep.
completely frying still. So yeah, that would be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to pick him. Like again, I was kind of a hater. I was like, oh yeah, he's just in tier two. It's not that big of a deal. He's
Yeah.
gonna come in and get diffed by the DRX player. He's gonna get diffed by Forsaken, but he really is just a very very talented player. So it's hard not to give it to him. I do agree that Moniette is probably the only other person I would maybe give it to, just because his impact has been crazy good on Smoke's role, which is I feel like Smoke's role has gone from being sort of like the maybe like your sort of like sneaky star player like it was last year, whereas
Mm,
we had like the crazy anchors of like Mako and Marved and the Omen play, the Astra play was like kind of carrying some games, and this year it's a little bit more like team oriented because of the dual
yeah.
smokes meta for the most part. So
Yeah.
having a lot of impact out of the smokes role is maybe a little bit more impressive than it was before.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably just got to be something, just because his performance has really been, it's been like tier one level. Like I would not be surprised to see him go head to head with like, the Durkas and Auspices of the world
Yeah.
and do reasonably well. I don't necessarily think he would beat them in a head to
Yeah.
head, but I do think that it wouldn't
You
be
can
like,
compete. Yeah.
yeah, it would be competitive for sure. Cool.
Okay. Those are the rookies.
Next
Next is
award.
storyline. I'm interested to see what you say. Let's start with America's again. What's your America's storyline as an NA fan? Sentinels?
Right? I mean, it's like which movie are we looking at? Is it the Sentinels? Like,
the,
Is,
the
is
chop
it
and
like a
change?
dark comedy at this point?
There
Is Sentinels a dark comedy?
is
Is
actually
it
some good choices, I think, though, in America's.
yeah? Is it the inspirational story of Cloud9?
Mm.
Is it the the sort of like Rocky story of Loud, where they like this is like Rocky 4, where like they've been champ, they got beaten down, but they're still swinging. Is it EG kind of like
Mm.
being memed on for the entire year, but actually being like a pretty good team, and let Potter cook? She's got something in the
Yeah.
kitchen going on. Um, for me, I think I think it's a little bit hard for me to not say Cloud9, just
That's the
because
correct choice. Yeah.
I think it has to be Cloud9, but it's been really close. I think the
Mm.
storylines have been really, really like they've made me want to watch a lot of the games. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite team in North America, but every week there's something happening where I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I should tune into these games a little bit. So I think for me it's Cloud9, but I do think that the EG stuff is cool. I think the Sentinels been entertaining at the very least, and the fact that
Mm.
Loud has remained on top has also been pretty inspiring to me. But I think it's Cloud9 just because of how terrible their offseason
Yeah.
before the leagues was and their results currently.
Yeah. It has to be Cloud9. I mean, like, we've become normalized to it now. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, Cloud9 are good. But if you would have shown someone the league table, like when Ye and Vanity got dropped, they would not believe you. There is no way that they would believe that Cloud9 are 7-1 with a 15-3 map diff and a way better round differential than anyone else in the league. Like
Yep.
there is just no one would accept that at all. But here we are, and it's kind of crazy that that is how it played out. In EMEA, it does feel like there is an option here. And
Just say it.
okay, if the season would have ended for Karmine Corp when they beat Koi, that might have been the greatest story in all of VCT.
Hmm.
Like this team that has just been beaten down to the point where one of their players leaves and they have to bring in their assistant coach who hasn't played since 2020. And, everything could not be worse. And then they managed to win a game. And the whole world united in going, yay, Carmine Cole won a game. Let's
It
go.
was so hype. That was so hype, that game.
Unfortunately, the season didn't end that day because then they've come out and kind of look gradually kind of worse again. Um, but I still think that that is the best story. I still feel like Carmine Core's journey of hitting the absolute rock bottom and then managing to claw their way out of it to get a win. Even if, yeah, the rest of the season has petered out and, like it's kind of like at this point, no one really cares.
Right.
Next year, like, yeah, I guess probably next year, but for LCQ maybe as well. People are invested in this team, I think. No one cared about them before.
Yeah.
But now I think they are there are eyes on Comic. I mean, obviously people did care about Comico. They're a pretty big org with like fans and whatnot. But like the wider Valorant audience, I don't think cared about Comico.
Yeah, I would agree.
But now they do. Like now everyone's kind of in on this team. Everyone's gonna want to know what's happening with Carmine Core. In like the off season or whatever, people are gonna be following what do Carmine Core do? Right? Do
Right.
they keep Scream? Do they keep Nevera? Do they keep the other players? Like people are gonna be interested to see what happens with Carmine Core. And so I think they are the best story.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty good case. I'm gonna say that the best story is Fnatic's unbeaten run, just continued excellence, because I know that's very difficult to do. And the fact that they came in, they looked the best at lock-in, they came in, they've just continually looked dominant. There was really no like honeymoon period. It was just like we put together a super team, and they are a super team. It's kind of like, I don't know if you watch basketball at all, but it's kind of like the Miami Heat when like LeBron and like the super team was formed for the first time. And obviously they didn't win the championship the first year, I don't think, but there was sort of like a lot of, is this team actually going to be as good as putting three superstars together? And then they were. And it was like, okay, cool. That can be done.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. But I agree that probably the hypest moment was definitely that Carmine Court win. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to Pacific, and there's some interesting choices here as well. I do want to give a shout out to the rise of RRQ.
Mm-hmm.
If they could have made playoffs, I feel like that would have been, that would have been like if they would have managed to beat Paper X somehow, and they would have made playoffs. That would have been kind of the sweet like ending to the story where they make playoffs and it's amazing and all of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately for them, they played Gen G at the start of the year, but I am going to stick with Gen G and the downfall of Gen G
Interesting.
because, well, we'll get into it a bit later with our picks. But I I cannot believe this team. Like I cannot believe this team. I was saying to you before we were doing the podcast, like Gen G are to me. I mean, I guess Fnatic would be a team as well, where it's just kind of been plain sailing all the way through. But they're the only like linear team where
Yeah,
it's just been like they were good. And this is the thing. Don't get baited into thinking that Gen G weren't good at the start.
they
They
were.
were good. Go and watch Gen G versus T1. Gen G slapped T1 and it did
Yeah.
not look close. And Gen G played well and they traded like every kill is traded. And their util is on point. Everything was working. And I don't know what happened to Gen G, but their brains have just exploded. It's
Yeah.
just like I have no faith. Like I honestly question whether they could beat like a detonation right now. Like genuinely, like
Wow.
no, because I just feel like I don't know if they're just not like it just is all falling apart. When you watch them play now, there's just so many things that you go like that you just look at and you're like, but why? Why did you choose to make that decision there? Like sometimes they just look so lost. And I don't know how that's. I mean, I guess to me it shows like again, and we've seen this a lot. And I didn't know how this would translate. This is my first time kind of following, I guess, an esports league,
Hmm.
format like this, like over a really long period of time, like week to week kind of thing. This is my first time really following something like this. And obviously, I followed it in traditional sports, and in traditional sports, you get the sense that like vibes matter.
Hmm.
Like,
100%.
like the team vibe matters. And if you're winning a lot, then it can cure like, like disagreements within the team. As long as you're all winning, that's fine. But as soon as you lose a game, if the vibes aren't good, it's not going to go well. And I think we've seen in multiple teams this year that a vibe shift can very much change a team and
Yeah.
make them play a lot better just from changing something. Even if that person who they changed wasn't even like I think if Sentinels were Def, is Def a toxic person? I highly doubt it. No one's really I can't think of anyone saying anything really bad about Def as a person, right?
Right.
Everyone who seems to meet him seems to like him. But maybe just the vibes are a bit better for Sentinels,
Hmm.
without Def. That's not to say, yeah, again, that Def is a bad person or whatever, but I don't know. It's just vibes. Genji's vibes are in the floor and they were up at the ceiling, and it's just crazy how it's like when Genji were 4-0, you you
I mean, they
you
were
could not,
legitimately playing some of the best Valorant in Pacific, period.
yeah, you could not have like again, it's like the Cloud9 thing. Like I just would refuse to believe that they ended 4-5. Like I'd be
Yeah.
like, there is literally no way they go 4-5. And yet here we are.
Yeah. I mean, both you and I thought they were incredible at lock in. Like,
Mhm.
we only saw them play one game, but off of that one game, because of how they
They
played,
look
I
good, yeah.
literally thought that they were going to be the best team. I thought they were going to beat DRX, which
Mm,
sounds crazy.
yeah.
But DRX apparently shattered their brain. And,
Yeah.
because ever since that loss to DRX, they have been awful. They have won one map since then.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway,
Uh,
let's move on to the best coach in each league. Now,
wait, hold up.
this one's, wait.
I didn't say my storyline.
Oh, sorry. I thought you, again, I keep thinking you're agreeing, but you're not.
My storyline is the other Korean team not named DRX, which is T1.
Oh, C1. Okay. Fair enough.
Because
Yeah.
for me, this team was bottom of the barrel. And that sounds crazy just because, they've got Saya player, they've got Munchkin. These are players with, some pedigree. But I was not sold on the Overwatch influx. I didn't think Carpe was going to do that well. I was pretty skeptical of their roster. And to be fair, they haven't been great. They've been good at times, kind of shaky at other times. But I've been impressed that they have gotten like pretty consistently better, it feels like, week to
Yeah.
week. And they legitimately seem like a team that could go to Masters Tokyo. I don't think they'll like do that well, but they've got something working here, which to
Mhm.
me is a great storyline for the Pacific region because T1 is like the storied franchise
Yeah.
in Riot esports, basically, with Faker, obviously. So it's a
Mhm.
very good thing that T1 has been able to take whatever shit show they had going in North America, bring it back to Korea, and form a team that like the T1 fans can get behind there, because I think that's really, really good for both Korean esports and just the overall scene as well. Okay,
Mm.
moving
Okay.
on.
Moving on to the best coach. Let's start with you then, and in Americas. And I think America's probably the easiest one. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it's really hard not to give it to MCE.
Yeah. I
I'm
don't
gonna
think I honestly don't think there is a case for anyone else. It has to be MCE, surely.
It has to be MCE, but I'm gonna try and sell you on a case for fraud.
You're not selling me. I'm an MCE.
The reason I'm gonna sell you on fraud is that he has come into this year as formerly the assistant coach, stepping into the head coach role. Two new players have to be integrated into a championship team,
Hmm.
and he's done so and kept this team on top. And
True.
he has created an entire meta that the entire world has now adopted as the
True.
correct meta.
True.
So the sheer impact of creating
Mm.
the Harbor Viper meta, and also taking the pressure and the expectations of the world championship team and not really allowing them to fall off despite having to replace two world-class talent with some young kids from the tier 2 scene and integrating them in and really allowing them to flourish, because Tui's and Kaunzine in particular have been unbelievably good. Honestly, we probably should have given Kaunzine a shout out for rookie of the year potentially. But for me, that's the case for Fraud.
Okay.
But it's MC.
I mean, I guess if you count lock-in as well and kind of the whole thing, then yeah, you could definitely make a case for Fraud if you do that. If you just look at the league season, though, it's obviously MC, and I still think that, like, yeah, Fraud, you're right, did invent a meta, and he's had to integrate two new players into a championship team, and he's kept them at that kind of level. MC was starting with MC got sabotaged by his own org and has managed to create a team which, at least right now, is playing better Valorant than a championship team, which is crazy. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And like, again, I still can't believe, like, I really, at some point, I'm gonna go back and watch some old Sonics VODs of Rooney,
Yeah, true.
because was he always this good with the sheriff? Like, he just always gets a kill with the sheriff, like, every time, and like, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, it's MCE for me. Now in EMEA, an interesting one, I think, because obviously Mini seems like a, obvious choice. They won every single game. Well done.
Right.
Like, that seems like an obvious choice. Is there anyone else who you would consider? I mean, Emil has taken. I mean, from where Team Liquid
No.
were.
Nope. Nope.
Nope. You're just going Mini.
It's Mini.
Yeah, I think so
You
too.
can't sell me on anybody other than Mini. Like
Yeah.
they're just too good, and the game plans are too good, and the structure's too good. It's Mini, and it's not even close.
I will shout out though as well. And again, talking about vibe shifts, uh, Epic, the head coach of BBL,
Mm-hmm.
because they changed their head coach.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I want to say, I can't remember exactly what week it was, but maybe after, like, it was after the Navi or the Giants game. BBL hadn't won a game yet,
Mm-hmm.
and he came in, and they've won 3 of their last 4,
Wow.
and looked better. So yeah,
Okay, that's fair.
but I still think it's Mini. Okay, and then in Pacific, now again, an interesting one. Could go a couple different directions.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to go for Ewok though, our nade
For
shot
RRQ.
lookalike for RRQ. Yeah, just because I feel like, again, from where kind of the expectation and maybe what we initially saw from this team to where they kind of are now. Like, if you told me that RRQ were going to win LCQ, I could see that. Like, I wouldn't be like
Mm-hmm.
that shocked, to be honest. I could definitely see that. If you take like DRX, PaperX, and then one other out, I could believe that RRQ are going to win LCQ for sure if they play like they can, play at their best. So yeah, I think the improvement that they've shown, I would say, is probably the most impressive. But I'm interested what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a decent option. For me, I think I'm gonna go with Warbirds for Team Secret.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is I think if we're including lock-in as well, I think they came in and looked really good at lock-in. I thought
Yeah.
their game plans were super good. And then they obviously kind of had a little bit of a fall off at the beginning of this season.
Hmm.
Losing to T1 and losing to RRQ actually. But I think it would have been really easy for this team to just kind of tank, because we've seen Team Secret do that in the past where they look like really good for a couple of months and then they just do nothing for like the rest of the year. But the fact that
Hmm.
they were able to kind of like hold on to this year and not just like plummet into the nether regions of Pacific down there with detonation and talent and stuff. The fact that they were able to kind of like hold on, grind their way through the season says a lot about being able to kind of like, okay, these things are going wrong. Teams are maybe anti-stratting us because we have some decent amount of footage out there from lock-in. and they've been able to kind of like maybe reinvent things a little bit. And I mean, we talked about some of the kind of like quote unquote rookie players that they've been integrating in pretty well. I think that they've shown that they have some resiliency, and they're still kind of like they've almost like bottomed out and are now like rising back up in terms of performance, at least from what
Yeah,
I've seen. And I think that that says a lot about the coaching staff being able to hold things together,
yeah.
and keep the team on the right track.
They got good vibes.
Yeah, good vibes for sure.
Okay, now this one is a really interesting one. And I'm interested to see what you say. But the most important agent of the first season. Now, to me, when you look at like the agent picks and stuff like that across the VCT leagues,
And
I
and
feel like
this is not for each league. This is just overall.
yeah, overall.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like looking at it just across each league. Obviously, we've seen the Harbor Viper, Sky, Killjoy, Jet. That has kind
Mhm.
of become a, or a variation of that. It has become meta on quite a few maps. So it seems like that one of those agents would probably be the pick. I think obviously the surprise would be Harbor, right? Like again, if you said before lock-in, like if you told people what Harbor's pick rate was before lock-in, most people assumed, oh, they must have given him some massive buff.
Right.
Right. They must have crazy buffed Harbor or redesigned him or something. Because people just wouldn't have accepted it. Harbor was again, it's one of those things where like with Cloud9, where now we just see it obviously as normal, and Harbor everyone accepts is just good. But back then, most people probably would have gone, no, there's no way Harbor is good. People thought he was,
Right.
the worst agent in the game. So a part of me wants to say Harbor, and I think I just will. I'm
Interesting.
going Harbor.
All right, I'm gonna hard disagree with you on this
Go
one.
on, here we go. Are you gonna say
Uh,
Jet?
uh yeah, it's just Jet and Killjoy. No, I'm just kidding. So for me, all right, let me hit you with some stats first of all.
Oh God,
Harbor, North America,
came much more prepared than me.
28% pick rate for Harbor in North America.
Yeah, yeah, but it's cool.
EMEA, 7% pick rate for Harbor.
Yeah, they don't like Harbor over there.
Pacific, 19%. So for me, Harbor is maybe the most overrated agent in the game. And
Interesting.
the reason that I say that is because Loud came out with this Harbor Viper Skyjet Killjoy comp and ran it on every map, and
Yeah.
every team started copying them.
Hmm.
And
Most teams were bad at it. I
most
made
teams
a
were
whole
bad
video
at it.
about that as well. Yeah,
Yep.
the Harbor Viper for a lot of teams didn't work. To be fair though, teams have got better at it. I think the
They've
thing
definitely gotten
was,
better. Yeah.
yeah,
Harbor's definitely gotten better for a lot of teams over
yeah,
the course of the season. But I think the biggest problem I have with Harbor
go on.
is that I think people think he's better than he is now. And
You think he's
he's
overrated now? Don't
he's
say this. I did this whole spiel with Chamber, and the pushback I got was crazy. Even though I was right, by the way, and I'm still never backing down from that. I was fucking right. You know why? Because no one thinks about Chamber was useless on attack. He gave
yeah.
you economy, and that's it. You don't need like how good is the Stinger? Good. You don't need economy. What do you mean? Chamber was useless on attack, and I'll never give it up. I had the stats, and so I don't care what you think. Chamber was overrated. Yes, he was strong. I'm not saying he wasn't strong. Yeah, he was too strong, and particularly in ranked was too strong because it was too easy
Yeah.
to play that agent. But I'm not having it. So I completely sympathize with you trying to take down an agent that everyone thinks is too good.
Okay. So
Sorry for that. Sorry,
that's
you brought
no.
you brought up emotions.
Go
It
off.
all
Go
came
off.
flooding back.
So okay, I will admit he's really good on Pearl,
Yeah,
and his ultimate is about as good as I thought it was, which is quite good. I think his
yeah.
ultimate's really good, and I think High Tide is good, the curvy wall.
Mhm.
But I don't think that you can say an agent is like S tier or A tier if they are just pretty dog at one half of the map. I think Harbor's defense is pretty horrendous. Like I know that his reactive walls with High Tide are pretty good,
Mm.
but and his diffusing with the Cove is pretty good. But I think if your entire game plan is literally like we're throwing this down and we're just going to try and stick the defuse in the middle of it. That's my entire contribution to this half. Not a very good agent in my opinion. I think there's certain moments I could see him being pretty meta on bind. I think his meta is good on Pearl. I don't really like anything else that I've seen.
Good.
Icebox, yeah, sure.
That's interesting to me because particularly for Pearl and Icebox, you're talking about maps where you will be retaking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think on particularly Pearl and Icebox, right, where for obviously B site Pearl and either site really on Icebox, like you're going to be retaking a lot. So Harbor can basically become an attacker again.
Exactly.
You're the one that has to take the space. Like, yeah, I think it does make more sense. But to be fair, I have quite liked some of the things I've seen on Bind. I still think there's weaknesses there. I still think Brim does give you some better options and whatnot. But I have liked some of the stuff that we've seen on Bind. I think is decent.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
I can agree with you that I think this is constantly because I keep up with the win rate data and stuff like that. I'm constantly seeing like why do teams keep picking this agent on this map? Like no one's winning with it. No one wins with it. Like when I'm looking at these stats, like I'm constantly just going, this isn't any good. Like it's interesting to me. Like the Pearl meta on America's the meta on America's Pearl, obviously like the Harbor Viper loud comp essentially, right? Like it does really well. Like it's starting to do really well. And I think it's a thing that annoys me about America's is everyone just seems to copy everyone. Like everyone just plays the same comps in America. So you might get like one or two different comps for a team on any other map, and then everything else is meta. And we don't play anything meta. Like if you look at EMEA and Pacific, they're a bit more willing to go their own way, I think. Particularly a team like Navi. But like the Americas split comp, the Astra Viper double duelist Sky, it's just not good. I'm gonna say it.
I don't really like it either. I think that Sage is like one of the best agents on Split.
It's just not good. Statistically, it's not good. When anyone runs it against a comp that is different, it loses. It's not even the best double duelist comp. The Cypher Omen Sage double duelist is better. It's just that comp, on the attack side pretty much, but just better.
Right.
and potentially it's even simpler to play the Cypher Sage version as well. So like so when I see these teams just copying these comps, I'm looking at the stats, I'm like, but you're never like no one's ever winning with this comp when they play against any other comp. It drives me mad sometimes. But obviously these teams, I guess, don't have like the global stats or whatever. They're focusing on themselves and their scrims and whatnot, I guess. But it does drive me a bit crazy sometimes when I see these comps constantly be run. But okay, did you ever answer the question? What your
no? I never have to answer the question. So I'll keep it short now. So I think for me there's two options. It's Sky, because Sky has like fully replaced Sova and Fade essentially. Like she's the only agent that has like an actual drone that can get deep into enemy territory basically. And I think with the return of Bind, she becomes even more important. I think that Split has become kind of like a very swing map in terms of a lot of people's map pool, and she's really good on Split. So for me, it's between Sky and KO. And KO has kind of fallen off in pick rate despite not really having any changes to him.
I think KO's now underrated.
I agree. And I think with the dual smokes meta, I think KO is like unbelievable against the dual smokes meta. You knife Viper, no more smokes, right? And to me, that's pretty powerful. So I think I'm probably going to go with KO. And I think that EMEA has a 35% pick rate on KO. America has 19%, and Pacific has a 32%. I think we're going to see the rise of KO at Masters Tokyo. But I think it's really close between Sky and KO.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And then an interesting one as well. I'm interested to hear what you say about this. Most impactful map of the first season. Obviously, the maps have changed a couple of times. We just saw Icebox leave. We've had the introduction of Lotus. What do you think? The most impactful map?
You go first. You go first on this one.
Okay, just throwing it back on me. Most impactful map. See, this is an interesting one for me because I would say like each region. This is one where I think you could separate it by region. For
Mhm.
like America's, they just love Pearl.
Yeah.
America's just loves Pearl. Everyone plays Pearl. In EMEA, no one plays Pearl. Everyone bans Pearl.
Because
We're
the
never
map is
playing it. We
trash.
don't care. Yeah, this map is trash. And what's funny is when Pearl first came out and like was at champs, all the EMEA teams were like just awful.
Yeah.
Pearl as well at champs, and all the Americas teams were good. So it's kind of funny that that's kind of carried on essentially.
Right.
With what's going on. I mean, I could get up the stats and tell you what the most played map is. The most important map. I mean, to me, honestly, a lot of
It's
the
different for
maps.
every region, by the way. So
Yeah.
I can just tell you, America's is Pearl, EMEA is Lotus, and Haven for Pacific are the top three.
See, one thing that I think is interesting though is normally the new maps do get played significantly less. I don't think we've seen that as much with Lotus. Even at lock-in, I think teams were embracing Lotus
Mm-hmm.
more than like most new maps. Normally it takes like a bit of a while before teams are willing to play it. We did see that a bit, but I think I might go Lotus because in my mind, Lotus might have even solidified the idea of playing double controller even more. Because
Mm-hmm.
when Lotus first came about, when teams were the early Lotus comps often were single controller, but then, now most teams are playing like, Omen Viper kind of stuff. Like it's pretty rare to see or if someone doesn't play double controller on Lotus, everyone always goes, well, you'd be better off playing double controller on Lotus.
Yeah.
Everyone always
Right.
says that. So I think I am going to go Lotus because I think not only is it the new map that maybe took a bit of time to figure out, but also I think it helps solidify that this is a double controller meta and that, even if initially it didn't necessarily look like people might have thought, oh, this is like Haven, therefore let's play a Haven comp. Instead, we ended up with no, this is Lotus, let's play Omen Viper and something like that. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go Lotus.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good shout. I think Bind is obviously another interesting one, just because new map, quote unquote, coming into the pool. It definitely shifts a lot of teams' map pools quite a bit. For me though, I think I'm gonna pick Split, and the reason I'm gonna pick Split is that it's kind of like the third or fourth most played map for each region, so it's played
Yeah.
quite a bit. But I don't think you ever really think about it, at least currently, as like, oh, this team is like crazy on Split, other than maybe like a couple of teams out there.
Hmm.
Everybody's always kind of like talking about Pearl. We're always kind of talking about Ascent. We're always kind of talking about Lotus. And Split kind of always maybe goes like a little under the radar. But I do think that once we get to like international competition, you're going to see teams that can like play. Obviously, teams that can play all 7 maps have a huge advantage. And I think Split is going to be one of those maps where we're going to see a lot of big difference, like big gaps happen. Like we're talking about this like double duelist comp that is like not good on the map that everybody's running, and then we look at a team like Liquid and their Split,
Yeah.
and they're just like smashing people with their
Yeah.
Cypher stuff. So I think we're gonna see a big gap once these regions collide in terms of how people
Yeah.
are approaching this map.
Yeah, this is bizarre to me. I didn't even realize this, but in EMEA and Pacific, Split's attack side is 52 in EMEA and it's 53 in Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 45 in Americas.
Mm-hmm.
And you're all playing double duelist. What are you doing on this map, Americas? You're all playing a comp against no sentinels and you're all playing double duelist and you can still only win 45% of your attack rounds. What are you doing?
That's
Like
pretty weird.
Like this is the thing that annoys me, by the way, about the Astra Viper Raise Jet Sky comp is that you know where everyone's going to be on the defensive side. Like everyone plays their defensive side the exact same way, and because they don't have a sentinel, they all have to just fill up one of the lanes, and you like it. You know where they're gonna. I can guarantee pretty much every team in Americas, the Astra is going to be over towards B, just jump peeking towards pillar. Like
Yeah.
it is always the case. And like, how are you only winning 45% of the rounds when you know where they are? What's going on?
Also,
Anyway.
quick aside before we move on to the next topic. Cloud9 might have the best Split. They
Oh yeah, that's
not a lot of them. Not a lot of the Split teams in North America are 2-0, other than EG actually and Cloud9.
Mm.
Um,
They don't play that
Loud's played Split like 9 times or
Yeah, oh
8
my
times,
God,
something like that.
But yeah, because
But
everyone picks it against them because they always do the same stuff.
Cloud9 is running a Breach Sky
Killjoy.
Killjoy, Raze, and single controller Astra, which is very interesting and way different
Yeah,
than a
that's
lot of
kind of
other
a
people.
weird comp, to be honest. I don't love that comp either, to be honest, but it's Cloud9, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, let's move on as we're running out of time here. Best IGL in each league is our kind of final award before we go to uh our final Preds for Tokyo here. And again, we can just go through each of the leagues. So let's start with Americas and your choice, Elevated.
America's best IGL. I mean, it's probably still got to be FNS, despite their early season kind of struggles. I just think that he's probably the most likely person to IGL diff a team still.
Yeah, 100%.
For me, it's him.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think Cloud9, the vibe you get is perhaps it's a bit more of a collaborative
Agreed
process. So it's a bit hard to say, but yeah, I agree with FNS.
Sodic's the only other one probably that you could like shut.
In EMEA, I mean, Boaster.
Yep, I don't think it's even close.
Boaster. And in Pacific, an interesting one. In Pacific, what do you think of Pacific?
Pacific?
Did you go for Paper X is not zero IGL?
No IGL Paper X. Pacific? Huh. Who even is the IGL for T1? Is it Zeta or is it Munchkin?
It was Munchkin.
Right.
I don't know if that's changed.
Yeah.
It could be Zeta now. I'll be honest.
I don't know. I don't really particularly like the IGLing on a lot of these teams. I think the mid rounding in Pacific is maybe the worst out of all three leagues, personally.
Should we give it to Aaron?
I mean, maybe. I'm gonna just I'm gonna go with Laz.
Jesse Bash?
I'm gonna go with Laz, and I think a lot of people might be like, "But Zeta, they just sit in spawn for a minute and 20 seconds, and then hit the site with like 20 seconds left every single time."
Exactly.
But I'm gonna go with Laz because I like Zeta Division. Go ahead.
That's the correct choice. And I'm gonna go with Paper X because they don't have an IGL, and that's also kind of funny. So, yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with.
Great.
Okay,
award.
and then finally, we've got our final predictions for Tokyo. Now, by the next time that we speak, the team should be known, I think.
Yep.
So by then we'll probably be talking about what's gonna happen at Tokyo, I assume. And so let's go through. Let's start with Americas again. Now we brought up our old Preds.
Yep. So for you,
yes,
you had Loud, Energy, and Leviathan were your top three. And remember, we did this like right at the beginning of the season. So
yeah. So this is the like start of the league predictions. I had Loud, NRG, Leviathan, which at the time seemed quite reasonable, and I think two of the three I'm still very much in for. I'm interested to see what you think. What chance would you give that one of the teams is not Loud, Cloud9, or NRG in Americas? Because that's obviously what I'm going to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably what I expect you to pick as well. But how much of a chance do you give the other teams?
I will give like 25%.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe. I think I'll give them like a little, a reasonable chunk that it could be 100 Thieves. I guess realistically, it could be 100 Thieves, Furia, or EG. All three of them, I think, have a chance.
Who would they beat, though? Like, that's the problem. Whenever you start thinking of it, who are they going to beat, though?
I could see potentially a Loud Rumble.
Oh.
Or I could see Cloud9 inexperience with Rooney and Jake under the pressure. Those are the two things, but I don't think either of those is particularly likely. But if I'm like thinking, for whatever reason, I feel the most confident in NRG. I think that
I actually agree.
I feel the most confident in NRG, and I could 20 maybe 25 is a little too high. 20% that one of the other two has like maybe they make it. They win the first game, they get spanked by NRG, they lose a little bit of confidence. go to the lower bracket, the pressure is higher, and then some like EG anti-strat happens or something like that.
Well, the interesting thing is I keep saying that the difference between first and second doesn't matter. I think in Americas it actually might, because if NRG finish in the third seed,
Mm-hmm.
if they win their first game, they'll play the second seed.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like NRG could beat Loud or Cloud9.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
agree.
it's possible. And I feel like maybe not so much for Loud, but if they played Cloud9, Cloud9 got like destroyed by a good NRG, and Cloud9 just had not as good of a day. It's been a while since they've lost a game.
Yeah,
What if they get destroyed? What if they like got absolutely like, oh my god, this comp is like, if NRG just like anti-stratted them to all hell, and like, oh god, our comp doesn't work anymore because
right.
NRG figured us out, right? Like,
How do they
I'd be
react to that?
interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, how I'd be interested to see. That's my only concern for Cloud9.
Yep.
However, if they don't play NRG, they'll be fine. So, are we
I would
both
agree with
going
that.
Loud, Cloud9, NRG?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, there we go. And then EMEA. Now EMEA has 4 teams.
Yep.
I previously at the start of the year went
You said,
Navi, Fnatic, Koi, and Vitality,
how you
which
feeling
isn't
about that?
it's not looking great. What did you pick at the start of the year?
I had Fnatic, Navi, Liquid, and Giants.
So, as always, Elevated was right, and I was very wrong, because at this point I do feel like, I mean, Fnatic and Navi should just be locks. Let's be real. They
Mhm.
should just be absolute locks. Have you heard my theory about how if you're seed 4 or 5, you should just throw your first game to not play Fnatic?
I haven't heard that theory, but that's an
Okay,
interesting one.
so here's the thing. So seed 4 and 5 play against Fnatic if they win their first game.
Uh,
But the thing is, if you lose in the upper semifinal, or if you lose in upper round 1, it doesn't matter. You go to lower round 1 no matter what, right?
uh-huh.
So if you're seed 4 or 5, you're going to lose to Fnatic anyway. So you just throw your first game, because you're not going to beat them. And that gives you an extra day prep for whoever you then play in the
Wait,
lower
so
round 1.
so the loser of upper round goes to lower round one and then waits for the next person to
Yes,
lose?
you get an extra day prep. And the thing about EMEA is you
That's
only
so
have to win
weird.
that second game and you're in. You've made it to Tokyo. In the other leagues, you'd have to win 2 games from then on. But in
Hmm.
EMEA, because of the extra slot, you only actually have to win lower round 1. And then you're in Tokyo. So if you throw the first one because you're not going to beat Fnatic, and then you get an extra day prep and you get to watch whoever you're playing, it could be Navi, which unlucky. But if Navi win, then you're playing, whoever, like Foot or whatever, and you get an extra day prep. And then if you win that game, congratulations, you made it. Wee, yay, yay. So yeah,
It's very
losing in upper
weird.
round 1, especially in EMEA, not too bad. But anyway, I'm gonna go Fnatic, Navi, Liquid, Giants, because I think that they right now look like the best teams. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm probably just gonna stick with my Preds, to be honest.
Excellent.
The only other team that I can see maybe making it is Foot, but I think I'm
Mm,
pretty happy with the four that I have.
okay. And then finally we got Pacific. Now no, let's start with your Preds for Pacific first, because mine are quite bad.
So at the beginning of the season, I had DRX, Secret, and PaperX, and I was, despite being super high on Gen G, for whatever reason, I picked Secret. I don't really know why. I don't remember my rationale for that, but um,
The game against
going,
Team Liquid, I assume.
yeah, I mean, going into this one, I think the only thing that I'm going to change is I'm going to pick Zeta Division because I want them to go to Tokyo. And I think that they are probably very even with Secret and could beat them. And for whatever reason, I just kind of believe in this team in the playoffs. I feel like they're
They got
probably
magic.
the most immune to pressure out of the three teams. I feel like T1 maybe is a little bit better, but I think they're going to struggle as
Mm.
like they're probably going to beat Genji. They're going to get smoked by PaperX, and then they're going to be like, "Uh-oh, what just happened?" Whereas if Zeta Division beats Secret, loses DRX, they've lost to DRX like 200 times at this point and recovered just fine. So I think Zeta is maybe the most resilient of the remaining teams. So I'm going to replace Secret with Zeta, but I think if the Secret beats Zeta, I could also see Secret making it through in the lowers.
My predictions. back in the day with DRX, Gen G, and Talon. Now that doesn't look too good right now. So I'm gonna change it. Well, I have to change it because Talon. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm just not gonna change it. Even though there's no Talon are mathematically eliminated. I guess in theory, is there a way? I mean, I guess if there was some match fixing scandal for like every Pacific team.
That's
other
why
than
Gen
Talon,
G has tanked so much. Replace them with Talon.
maybe that's their only way in. I that probably is their only way in. Really, is some kind of big match fixing scandal.
There would have to be multiple because
Oh
global
yeah, they'd
and
have to.
RQ would
Yeah, it'd be
both.
like the whole league. Basically, I'm praying for like the whole league, other than Talon, match fixed. Although you'd think with Talon playing triple duelist, they would be the most sus.
True, true.
So yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with it. Let's go, Gen G. Talon can't make it, but oh well. We'll die on this hill. We'll root for match fixing, I guess.
Okay. Well, no, give me one other one, just in case there's no match fixing.
Paper X are going.
Okay.
100%.
Cool.
Let's go, Gen G. I've still got. I'm the last person on this train, even though I called you kind of trash earlier.
I respect it. All right, that is it for Cosmic Divide episode 6. Thanks, TMV. Go enjoy your stream. Talk some more Valorant.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Many hours of Valorant.